Right, folks, on the next one, we're doing what they call, or what we call, a variegated wash. All it really means is it's various colours in going into the same thing. So this is our sky. So I'm putting some water in 2 spaces here, and the colours that I want are ultramarine blue and some alizarin crimson. I've already got a fair amount of my ultramarine blue left, so I don't need to do any more. But the important thing here is when you're mixing these colors, the important thing is that they're about the same consistency. So if you have a really runny ultramarine blue or a really weak solution, then you really need to match that with the other colors. So for washes in particular, everything wants to be around the same consistency. If you have one colour that is wildly thicker than the other, what will happen is when you apply the thinner mix of paint, it will just cauliflower everywhere. So they all want to be about the same consistency. So the colour I'm mixing at the moment is the raw sienna. I want a good amount of it because I don't want to have to go and remix part way through. And it will simply dry in the palette and I can use it next time. So it's not going to be wasted. So we've got that. That should just about do me, I think. Seems to be about the same consistency. So, and then I'm going to just wipe the brush off. I'm not going in the water, and then I'm going to pick up some alizarin crimson. Now alizarin is quite a strong color, so just be aware of that, but having the alizarin and the ultramarine blue near each other is not usually a problem. So again, it's the consistency I'm interested in. I've got quite a wash effect blue and raw sienna. So my alizarin crimson has to be the same consistency. If I make it a lot thicker, then it's not going to move on the paper and it's not going to blend in the way that I want it to. So that's my paints mixed. So this first one, we're doing wet on wet. So again, I may have slightly bluey grey water, we'll see. Again, I'm just going to wet the paper side to side. Oh yes, it's got a touch of blue in it for you. Side to side, all the way down. And it's just my approach. It doesn't mean that you can't wet it some other way. Sometimes I'll spray paper, sometimes I'll use a sponge. There's any number of ways of doing things. I'm just showing you how I do it and how I find it easier. So again, I'm going to give it a few seconds just to let the water soak into the paper. And you may or may not be able to see it, but I can see a few areas where the shine has already gone off. In the areas where the shine's gone off, which often happens around the taped areas and things, then all that means is that the water has already been absorbed into the paper quicker. So I will go back over that just to make sure that I don't end up with some areas that are wet and some areas that are dry. And now I'm ready to go in with my first round of colours. Now, watercolour, we work from light to dark. The lightest colour that you've got mixed is your raw sienna. And we're going to take that right to the very bottom here, and we're going to work upwards with it. So again, I'm loading my brush fully. I'm not just dipping the tip of my brush in. I'm loading the brush fully. And then I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to just put this on straight. Just here. Now, raw sienna is a lovely colour. It's, I always think of it as a sort of summery colour. So I've got that in, and then I'm angling it up slightly. Now, without cleaning the brush, I'm just going to pat it off on some tissue. So all I'm doing is taking the excess moisture out of the brush. I'm going straight into my alizarin crimson, because if we have the raw sienna right next to the blue, we will end up with a nice green tint. I've overlapped it on this where they meet. That's absolutely fine. I don't want it to end up looking stripy. So by giving it that slight overlap, you get this mixture of the tones. And now I'm going straight in, again, don't clean the brush, straight in to the ultramarine blue. And where we get this overlap, you'll get it changing and it has a slightly purple tone to it. And then I'm just bluing it off more towards the top. And that's all we need to do really. On this one, we're doing some lift out clouds, and we're going to lift out with the brush. So I'm going to go back and use, well, I might use the same brush actually, so I'll just stick with my flat. So you need to wipe the brush off. It needs to be clean. And then all I'm going to do is where these colours start to overlap, I'm just going to use the corner of the brush. The real bit I'm interested in is the top. I'm not really that bothered about the bottom. I want the top of the cloud or clouds. I just want them to have some shape. So I'm just using the corner of the brush and just squiggling that corner around a little bit. Hopefully you can see that reasonably well. This is still quite wet for me, so it's backfilling a little, but it's not a problem. I'm going to move up now, and I'm going to start another band of cloud higher up. You will always see the clouds better against the brighter, darker colours, or the stronger colours anyway. So you're always going to see where you've lifted out much better when you get into things like the reds and oranges and blues than you will in the yellows, but it's there's enough. This is a small piece of paper, so we don't want great big huge clouds. We just want something that gives the impression of the sky moving on a nice summer's day. So all I'm doing, just the corner of the brush, just swirling it around on the top, just to get those nice rounded edges. I will go back and redo that one. And I might just put a little bit up here. So just petering out, it's just taking itself off out of the painting. And that's all we need to do. Again, if you're going back into the yellow, make sure your brush is clean if you've done the blue or the red, because otherwise you'll transfer blue or red back down here. So again, just going back in, just the corner of the brush. Just lifting a little bit out. There's almost no pressure. It's almost like the brush is barely touching the paper. You don't want to get a lot of pressure on it. You don't want to disturb the surface of the paper. So there's no real pressure on it. It's just touching it. Do that one, and there we go. And I think that's enough for what we were planning on doing. Let that completely dry. Let's just lift that out again there. Let that completely dry. If you wanted to get little white tops on here, then you can use some slightly damp tissue. Now, I will nearly always roll mine into a little bit of a point, just so that I have got control about where the tissue makes contact with the paper. This is still damp and wet, so if I have a lot of paper hanging about, it's going to be dragging through it and potentially disturb the paint. So all I'm doing is just lifting out on the very top some lighter, brighter areas. That's all I'm doing. Same here, just going to the very top. Now this is still quite wet. If your paper, however, is already drying, then you'll want to do this with a slightly dampened tissue. So you just damp the tissue, make sure there's not a lot of water in it, because you don't want to carry tons of water on the tissue in. Otherwise, again, you'll end up with cauliflowers. So here for this one, just going to put a few little white highlights around it. And the nice thing about lifting out with the brush is that it leaves some of the colour in the clouds. Clouds are rarely pure sharp white. They tend to look a bit like sheep jumping over something. So have a go with the brush, see how you get on. And as I say, you can always use a little bit of tissue just to put some very bright areas on the tops if you want to. Okay, good luck with that. Let it dry. Don't do anything else with it. Just leave it alone.